And we're live.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good evening, depending on where you are. For example, somewhere in England where it is 8 o'clock at night. I'm so delighted to have another chance to talk to Lord Jeffrey Archer about William Warwick. I went back and looked, and we had a conversation in 1921. Sorry, really old, 2021, and 2022. Four books. I looked it up. Over My Dead Body and Next in Line, which are kind of in the middle of the William Warwick series. So this is the final book. It's great to end up with it. So how are you, sir?
I'm very well indeed, and good to see you again and all those wonderful books behind you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's my own library. So I try
And
to. I unfortunately have a pair of very unruly and ill-trained dogs across from me on the sofa.
all
So it's
right.
a risky place for me to be talking because anything could go wrong, but we'll see how it goes. In any case, this book does not publish here until next week, September 23rd, but I
Yep.
am holding on to an early copy. Lucky me, but we don't have them for sale yet. Um, was that Ian coming back in? Do we have to start over?
Nope,
No.
you're good.
All right, great. I know a voice from the past. So, one of the things when Jeffrey and I first met, I asked him what he would like me to call him, because after all, he is Lord Archer. And he replied, Jeffrey. But
Quite right.
yeah, but in this book, I think that forms of address and proper titles and even first names do play a role in this, which is not nearly as perhaps well understood in America as it is in Britain. But I did love the way you played with that at the end of the book, which we won't get to. But I thought that was really fun. You must have had a good time doing that.
Well, in the end, I'm a storyteller, so twists and turns are, you're quite right, fun.
So, Jeffrey and I are the same age, as it turns out, and I've always thought I had kind of a colorful life, but I can't possibly equal Jeffrey's career. So I went and looked up a few things, and I discovered two things that he has done in his life before Cain and Abel, which was his runaway bestseller that he published in 1979. One is apparently you had a brief stint with the Metropolitan Police. Is that right?
About 10 minutes, yeah.
Oh, but still, if you're going to write about the Metropolitan Police, it's handy that you had at least a little experience.
Yes.
Yep. Yep. And the other had to do with an art gallery. And you're kind of running villain in this series, Miles Franklin. There's a lot about art in this series. So has that always been a real
Oh,
fascination
an
for you?
absolute passion all my life. I can't stop collecting. Uh, I don't know what you can see in this room. No, you can only see windows. The house is full of pictures. I am a nutcase. There's no doubt about that. And I love collecting and I love discussing art. I love reading about art. So you're quite right. It gets into the books. And I always advise young authors when you're thinking about writing, write about subjects that you really enjoy, and not only subjects you really enjoy, you have some knowledge about. Because then the reader, Barbara, will know you know what you're talking about and feel more confident. So I often get people saying, oh, but Jeffrey, I only know about X. I say, that's fine. People will be fascinated if you tell them about that world. And don't be frightened of that because people love to read about something often that they don't know about, but you tell them.
I think that's one of the enduring reasons people read crime fiction. Good crime fiction always has information in it that is far more palatable to acquire in fiction than it is often for people in
Yes, definitely.
nonfiction. And really, with the state of information being so unreliable today or outright false, I like to think that authors really, present you with if not research, at least they have done their homework and what they tell you has a sound basis.
But isn't it frightening to say what you've just said
Hmm.
quite openly and without a second thought? You said very casually, nowadays you cannot rely on things you're told being the truth. Nowadays, you cannot rely on information. So perhaps the fiction writer has to be careful as well. I think that's terrible, Barbara. I think that is a terrible comment on the state of society today, that our leaders, we can't look to them and expect them to lead us, but the first thing, to tell us the truth.
But do you think it was a false comment?
Oh no, I thought
No.
it was 100% right.
No.
I totally agreed with it.
Yep.
Absolutely,
Well, and it
totally.
really comes up in this book, which we'll get to in a minute. But let me say first that this is an 8 book series, and if I remember right, you always intended it to be 8 books, kind of the arc of his career, which begins in 1970 when he's a constable, and we're
Yes.
ending it in 2012 in London, which we'll be discussing. So that means that if you're doing 8 books, you can visit him in a new role every 5 years if you want, or you can skip around depending on, how you feel about his career advancement. But why did you settle on 8 years, or did it gradually come up?
The latter. I think he started off as a constable, and then he works in the art and antiques department. And I decided to move him from constable to sergeant to inspector to chief inspector to superintendent to chief superintendent. And does he become commissioner? But with each new rank and each new story, I decided to go from art to murder to fraud to royal protection, and keep moving the stories and getting absolute top class experts in that field to advise me. So the reader not only gets the story, but they know I've dealt with the head of that department. And in the case of the latest book, Endgame, I went to see Sebastian Coe in Monaco, where he's head of the World Athletics, the International Athletics Federation. And because, of course, he had run the 2012 Olympics, he was in charge of them. And he said, the one person you've got to see, Jeffrey, is you've got to see Commander Bob Broadhurst, who you'll find on page 3, because he's got the Queen's Police Medal, he's got the Order of the British Empire, and he was in charge of the Olympic Games security. So I went to see Bob Broadhurst, and I was shocked. I thought he would give me a couple of amazing insights if I was lucky. He gave me 14. The Olympic Games in London could have closed on the day of the opening ceremony and been a complete disaster. There were 13 other incidents that happened that would have either been very embarrassing or actually closed the games. So I put his 13 in, maybe 14, and I put 7 or 8 of mine in. And what you have to decide in Endgame is which the commander gave me and which I made up totally out of my imagination. And the shock will come is the 2 that could have stopped the games I did not make up.
That's truly frightening. Do you know, I remember watching them, and I know that, for many people, the sort of not the game highlight, but the other highlight of the game was the wonderful video with Queen Elizabeth and Daniel Craig, which I've always loved because it showed her having such a sense of humor that she was willing to do it. But for me, this is really embarrassing, but I'm not actually. I'm a classical music and an opera fan, not particularly a popular music fan. And I will never forget being introduced to so many of the British music groups I think it was the opening ceremony, but it could have been the closed one. But in any case, I mean, it was a real revelation to me. And my husband, who was in Egypt at the time, when he came back and I started talking about it, he was so impressed that I had gained some knowledge that apparently I had, never had before. And so I mean, I remembered the games themselves, but those 2 things, both the assemblage of the music groups and the Queen's video tend to stick a lot. But it didn't occur to me, or probably anyone else watching it, that these behind the scene terrorist or, whatever activities they were going on. It looks so smooth.
And of course, the world has moved on a lot since 2012, as we have seen uh, with TikTok, with social media, with Google, with everything. It's moved on so far. But what I didn't know, and the commander told me, was two incidents that were within minutes of stopping the game. So you and I, casually watching it, thinking this is fun, I'm enjoying the music, didn't know that behind the scenes, and the Queen was involved,
Uh-huh.
behind the scenes, something was going on. And he told me, and it's in the book.
Well, I have said in my um, publicity for the book, soliciting pre-orders, which we have a lot. And thank you for signing some of our books in London so that we will be getting the British copies as well. Um, how I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Um, that only you, with that kind of access as a contemporary writer, probably could have come up with this plot, because it did require you to actually talk to people who were willing to tell you about these things and to trust you that, I mean, I'm assuming that part of this was you weren't supposed to ever tell us which were the real threats and which were the
Well, I think he wouldn't have told me 14 years ago. I think there's no doubt about that.
right.
I've subsequently wrote him a very firm, straight letter saying, I am going to do this, but not without your permission. And he wrote back immediately saying, I've read the book, Jeffrey. I accept it. I have no problem with it. So the commander, who does know which incidents were true
Right.
and which were not true, has given me the all clear to go on radio, television, shows like yours and say, watch out, because you and I, among millions, missed something that very nearly happened.
Right. But you don't tell us which ones they are. So,
Certainly not.
nope.
At the
So,
back of the book, if you
what is
turn to the back of the book, you will see the incidents. You have the book there, I know.
you
If
do?
you turn to the back of the book, and you can see the incidents, and you have to put a tick or a cross against each one
Right.
that you think is made up and you think is real.
That's almost like the old-fashioned clue finder that used to show up in Golden Age mysteries, where at the end of the book there would be, Martin Edwards, the chairman of the Detection Club and other things, has reinvigorated the clue finder by putting in, those bits in the book where the reader should have picked up and paid attention. So
Yes,
it's
yes.
a very similar thing, which I think is, really good fun for the reader. So all the way back to 1970, why did you decide? I mean, you've written so many books. What was it about the idea of William Warwick that really appealed to you?
I think that many people had said to me when they read the Clifton Chronicles, which went to sort of number one all over the world, the many readers wrote and said, I want to know about William Warwick. Your
Uh,
hero in the Clifton Chronicles is a novelist, and his stories are about William Warwick, this detective in the Metropolitan Police in London. So I thought I can do that. I can take him from constable right through to, well, we've now got the last book. Does he become commissioner? I can do that as an arc. And in answer to your question, Barbara, I couldn't be sure whether it would be 5, 6, 7, or 8 books.
right.
It ended up as 8 books because that was the symmetry worked for that. And this final book, where he is a chief superintendent in charge of the Olympic Games and is being considered by the Home Secretary, along with someone else, to be commissioner, but it rests on how he does at the Olympics.
Yes, well, it's clearly either it's going to be a game changer one way or the other. Either he will get busted or he will
Oh,
get
yeah,
promoted one way.
exactly.
So, in case I confused any of you, the first book actually published in 2019 but I was referring to William starting out in 1970 as a bee
Oh, I
constable.
see what you mean. I'm so sorry.
No,
As
no,
a
no, it was
constable on the beat.
right. Yep. But I realized that I might have made people think you actually, because you didn't really write your breakout bestseller till 1979 with Cain and Abel, so, or 78, whichever it
Yes,
was.
that changed my life overnight. It's now been read by 100 million people. The figure that people find hard to believe, because 100 million people always sounds kind of ridiculous until you say it's in 119 countries in 47 languages, and the English edition is on its 142nd reprint.
Wow. That really is a remarkable set of statistics. I know
Yes,
I read in something that it's sold like 320 million copies so far, but those figures are always kind of a moving
you
target.
can't believe. It's very interesting you say that, Barbara, and I accept it. I those sort of figures they bandy publishers bandy about. You can't be sure. What you can't discuss is the 142nd edition.
Right. No,
Publishers don't
that's, yep,
they
you're
don't
right. You can,
publish the 142nd edition. There hasn't been 141 before them.
it's marvelous. So now that you're done with William Warwick, do you have any thoughts about writing something else, or are you going to take a little time to just like, I
I've
don't
had an
know.
idea in my mind for the past 6 years, which I think is bigger than Cain and Abel,
Ah.
and it's going to take some writing. But yes, that's where my heart is at the moment.
So reading this, particularly this last book, it seems almost made for television. Has there been interest in a
Yes, we've
TV
sold.
series for William?
Yep, we've sold the rights for actually. It's a weird old world because you being an American will understand better than we poor Brits about Hollywood. Uh, Cain and Abel was made a miniseries many years ago and was seen by a billion people, whatever, worldwide. Uh, so they claim. But last week we had two of the largest companies on earth saying, "Can we make Cain and Abel again?" So watch this space.
Wow.
I'll believe it when I see it. My very wise son, William, always says to me, uh, don't believe it, Dad, until you're eating the popcorn.
That's a very nice phrase. Hollywood is, yes, weirdly dysfunctional. And over 36 years, because the bookstore Poison Pen will turn 36 in October, I have heard innumerable stories from authors about, you know, options, movie deals,
Yes,
all the rest. And many of them come to
yes.
grief. And then some really surprise you, I mean, but
And some that get made and are dreadful and have
yes.
that are nothing to do with or they fans write and say, wait a minute, it's got a lot to do with the book. So there's that side. It's one thing getting a great director, a great producer, a great script. You've then got to have a good series that people want to make series 2, series 3, and series 4. Otherwise, it goes down the drain. I can name authors who've said to me, "Oh, Jeffrey, it didn't bear any resemblance to the book at all."
Well, it also depends on the casting. I mean, sometimes, despite a good script and other things, sometimes the lead actor or
Well,
actors just don't bring
there's
it
another
off.
side to that, Barbara. It can be the other way round.
Hmm.
You can have a wonderful script, and you're right. You're 100% right. A bad actor can ruin it, but you can have a good script. You can have a bad script, a bad script. The best actors in the world won't save it.
Well, let's hope that that is not going to be,
Yeah.
on your
Keep your
horizon.
fingers crossed, keep on dreaming, and send the popcorn when you're ready.
Love it. So, for the benefit of American audiences, we've been talking about the Metropolitan Police. Many Americans think that Scotland Yard is like, the police force. So, do you want to describe for us the difference between the Metropolitan Police and Scotland Yard?
Oh, it's the same thing. Scotland Yard is the headquarters of the Metropolitan Police. They are exactly the same body. Their building is about 200 yards away from the House of Commons and the House of Lords. Massive new building. It used to be in Scotland Yard. It's now moved, and Scotland Yard's only just round the corner from there in any case. So if you're part of the Metropolitan Police, of course, Barbara, you may be in a borough, so you're not in Scotland Yard. But
Okay.
the headquarters, where the commissioner lives, where the top brass lives, is in Scotland Yard, and they are the heads of the Metropolitan Police. They've probably got, if I remember correctly, about 46 divisions within London, and some of them as far away as 20 miles.
Right.
So it's a big organization.
But my question really was, the Metropolitan Police clearly would be Metropolitan London, but Scotland Yard, as I understand it, can go anywhere in Britain if called in. I thought it was
Oh,
anyway by the Chief Constable.
if called in.
Right.
If you were in Manchester or Liverpool or Edinburgh, even less Edinburgh, Bristol, if they said this case needs a world expert in art, this case needs a world expert in fraud, this case needs a world expert in money laundering, they might go to Scotland Yard and say, we've got this big case has landed on our patch. Can you please send Professor so-and-so or Dr. so-and-so down to advise us? So yes, you're 100% right that they can go well beyond their remit. Even in Europe, they can go beyond their remit, that people seek their advice. Yes, you're quite right.
So I ran across, and I don't know if you have met Sally Smith, a new author, but she has written two books of Mice and Murder, I think is the first one, and can't remember the second. But anyway, she's a barrister, and these are two books set in 1901 in the Inns of Court in London, and greatly to my interest, the Metropolitan Police are not able to enter into, at least then, um, the Inns of Court to police unless they are invited, which I thought was fabulous. So I went to see them when I was in London in last year ago. So it would have been 2024. I went to a Capital Crimes Conference and I spent the morning going over to the Inns of Court and inveigling my way inside because I was
I
so
am not
fascinated.
surprised.
But I mean, I found that so intriguing, that there would be, within London, and it may not be true today, although I haven't really checked, but there was anyway until the start of the 20th century. The Inns of Court were not hunting grounds for the Metropolitan Police. I just love the English traditions, where you could run across things like that.
Yes, some of them are centuries old.
They are. So I mentioned earlier that proper titles and the use of first names had something to do with the fun of this book, at least for British readers, maybe for American readers. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because you're so much more formal than Americans. I mean, I did a book launch for James Patterson and President Clinton, and it would never have occurred to me to call him Bill. I
Yeah,
called him
quite
President
right,
Clinton. Right.
Mr. President.
Yeah,
Quite
I
right.
did.
Behave
Mr.
yourself,
President.
Barbara.
Yep,
Quite
Mr.
right.
President or Sir. But we're so much more informal here, and yet at
Well,
the
you
end,
say that, and you're quite right. And the British are a lot more formal. One of my dearest and closest friends, who I love and adore, and we were at Oxford together. Bill uh, was Senator Bill Bradley, who was Senator for New Jersey.
right?
We talk every other Sunday on the state of American politics because I am fascinated by American politics. And I open up, Barbara, although he's one of my closest friends and made a speech at our 50th wedding anniversary, I open up and was one of my ushers at my wedding. I open up with "Good morning, Senator." And when the conversation is over, half an hour later, I say, "Goodbye, Senator," because I respect the fact that he achieved it.
Right.
He Bill in between and a dear and close friend, but do not, I wish to acknowledge what he has achieved.
Well, that certainly is the case here with William Warwick and his superior, and I really enjoyed the flip-flop there at the end, which I'm sure you had fun
Don't tell
writing.
anyone that. No, that's the final twist. Yes, you're quite right. You're quite right.
But it was great fun. So, anything else you'd like to discuss?
No, I'd like to say, as always, it's fun being on your show and it's fun talking about the books, and to say to any readers listening, uh, God, it's never been tougher to get published, but that shouldn't put you off. You should keep going because you will have seen uh, many authors make it, some of them in the last few weeks.
Very true. Do you know, one of the hardest things, I think, there's an organization here you made a run across called Thriller Fest, the International Thriller Writers Conference. It started thanks to a drunken remark I made at a conference that I held here in Arizona, where growing impatient, no, it's really true, growing impatient with the many complaints from the thriller writers about a lack of organization and recognition. It was like Lee Child and Vince Flynn and Kathy Reichs and a number of authors. I finally said to them, go start your own fucking organization. And they lit up and said, oh, what a good idea. So they did. And the thriller writers have done a wonderful job helping people get published. They have something called Craft Fest. They have another Pitch Fest where, people who hope to become published can go and talk. But I'm going to be the thriller legend this year because this year 21 in New York. And I said that rather than they're paying my expenses, I would like to take the money and create a scholarship fund for writers who get a contract and they have a first book, but they don't really know what to do. It's very hard for a first-time author with a brand new book to know how to go about
It's never been
publicizing.
tougher, Barbara.
It's
It's
really
never
tough.
been tougher.
I agree. So anyway, that is what we've done. And they sent out a notice the
Well
other
done.
day that we had created this scholarship fund. But that's been the work that I have done at the Poison Pen for 36 years is to
Huh?
focus on debuts. Because I think if we don't keep getting new voices, that it will, in the end, deprive readers of stories. And the whole system may come to not the whole system, but the whole literary world would suffer from it, I think, if we don't get. I mean, it's wonderful to have people like you who've had long and glorious careers and are still doing fresh and wonderful work. I mean, I just love this book. I really do. I was so fascinated reading it. But I also think we need new writers. And so that's been kind of my
Oh,
my goal, is to work on that. So
and it's
um,
very hard. Young writers come to see me all the time. I would think one a week. And I say the cruel thing is, and one of the things you pointed out, Barbara, before I tell you what the cruel thing is, one of the things you pointed out is getting the support when a new book is published, knowing what to do. It's not that easy, but in the end, the public decide. They decide who they want to read. And sometimes they shock us,
yes, they
and
do.
sometimes they don't.
Well, you're right. I'd like to think that I'm a pretty good book whisperer, in the sense
For
that I'm
sure.
I'm quite good at reading first novels, and it's a combination of how good the writing is, what the concept of the story is, but you can also tell publisher support. You can also tell there's a whole lot of, vibrations that kind of go on and you can work it out. We're in an era where a lot of books that are actually not that wonderful but get enormous amounts of money behind them do well. And I would like those books that are less favored to also have a path. So
Well, I'll tell you a story on that. First, I'll answer the first part of your question. Uh, there are a lot of bad opera singers. There are a lot of bad violinists. There are a lot of bad ballet dancers. But we've all seen the best and loved them, and that's been a privilege. But in this other fascinating subject you raise of how, as a first author, get going, I'll tell you a lovely story. When I first went to New York with my first book, Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less, I went to Doubleday's in New York. Now, Doubleday's in those days had two bookstores on Fifth Avenue,
mhm.
a big, big, big one and a rather lovely small boutique bookshop about a quarter of a mile away, 3 or 4 blocks away. So what I did, Barbara, I went down to see them, and the shop man working said how much he loved Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less. And I thought, well, that's a very kind thing to say, this poor Englishman roaming around New York on his own. That's very kind. And I went off, and I came back a year later with Cain and Abel, which was #1 everywhere. But there was Not a Penny More, Not a Penny Less at #10 on his, he had 10 books out, and I was #10. And I said, it can't possibly be #10. It's 2 years ago. And he said, it stays at #10 as long as I work in this shop. And there was an example of someone who loved a book, wanted his customers to buy it and to read it, and he left it at #10. Hold your breath for 5 years.
Wow. Well, it's certainly true.
And that can be a bit of luck. That was a bit of luck.
I'm always interested to see which books my staff, because we have several booksellers, which ones they fasten on. And, and the phrase is, quote, hand sell, but basically that just means they try to recommend it to everyone. And it works out. So, Ian, come and join us and tell us if we have, before Jeffrey goes, any questions or comments from the audience.
Yes, there are a few questions here. First question, Jeffrey, how have you stayed motivated to keep writing after all of these years?
I had the privilege and honor of working for Margaret Thatcher for 11 years. And therefore, I think hard work was imbued into me, #1. #2, if you go to #1 all over the world, you go on writing. You don't say, I understand when a lot of authors come to me and say, Jeffrey, I don't know what to do. My 3rd book, I don't know what to write. And they're not selling very well. I understand that. And it would affect any normal human being. But as long as the public all across the world keep buying them, it makes you get up in the morning and try a bit harder.
How do you handle writer's block?
I've never had it, so I can't answer the silly question. Now, haven't I been lucky? Do you know, I know, I've always known the next 3 books. I've always known where I'm going. I've never had writer's block. My home in Mallorca, where I write, is called writer's block.
Could we ask why?
I just thought it was a fun name.
It is. No, I agree with you. I think it's wonderful. I thought it also meant that it might mean that you were on vacation, but you said that's where you go to write. So clearly that's not it.
No, that's where I go to write. The first draft, which takes about 3 months. I rise in the morning at 5:30. I do 6 to 8, 10 to 12, 2 to 4, 6 to 8. The first draft's about 90 days, about 300, 400 hours. And that's all done in the privacy of Mallorca, where no one can find me and no one can get at me. And it's a lovely home, and it overlooks the sea. So when my head goes up, all I see in front of me is the sea, which is a great privilege. And so we thought it'd be fun. My wife and I thought it'd be fun to call the house Writer's Block.
Definitely.
What's more challenging for you, deciding how to start a book or how to finish a book?
Well, they're about equal. It's a very good question. And I have to say, I think one does more work on the first page and more work on the last page than any other page in the book. And opening lines are so important. I mean, the opening line of Cain and Abel, she only stopped screaming when she died. It was then that he started to scream. Now you can spend hours moving one word, moving just, once you've got it, you think, no, wait a moment, I've got to get that, wait a moment, I've got to put, it was then, I've got to put then in, then we'll make you're fighting even on the sentence. to make people go to gasp. You need them to gasp and say, I've got to read the next sentence. And then, I can't remember because I haven't got it here, but it's something like, the shepherd listened carefully. It wasn't the sound of an animal. It was the sound of a human. He moved towards it tentatively, and then he saw the dead woman and the baby. So you've got to take them, and never let them go.
And the other part is you have to deliver an end that is as strong as the beginning.
Ends are absolutely, you're quite right, Barbara. Ends are absolutely vital. If you give them a bad ending, they feel they've wasted their whole time reading the book. You've got to do something. I remember in the final version of, well, no, the final version of the Clifton Chronicles, when Harry Clifton has died, and they're all in Westminster Cathedral to honor his death. And his closest friend, a very old man, is still there. And I decided a long time before that I was going to interlope the great speech. And this was the noblest Roman of them all. All the conspirators, save only he, did what they did in envy of great Caesar. He only, in common thought and general thought, made one of them. His life was gentle, and the elements so mixed in him that nature might stand up and say to all the world, this was a man. And I knew then that was the title of the book. This was a man had to be the title of the book, so that when you got to the end, you went, got it, Jeffrey.
And finally, what are you currently reading?
I read a book a week, either for research purposes or for sheer fun. At the moment, because of the work I'm doing on my next book, which is based on reading a speech by Adolf Hitler, a very long speech by Adolf Hitler, and the response by Winston Churchill of another very long speech, which gave me the idea for the story. So I'm now doing a lot of research on the Second World War. So that is what I am doing. What have I been reading? My favorite author, before we go on to what I'm reading at the moment, is Stefan Zweig, the great Austrian author who escaped Hitler and wrote the wonderful book, Beware of Pity, which I consider as a work of genius. And I learn from it whenever I read it, I just love it. And I don't think he's ever written anything that was other than quite outstanding. The book I've most enjoyed in the past few years would be Gentleman in Moscow. I didn't know the author. I didn't know the book. It was recommended, and so many of us go on recommendations. And I read it and loved it and have been recommending it ever since. But if I was to answer your question quite honestly, I would say it's very rare for me to say, wow, you've got to read this one. Very rare. I like to believe I've read all the classics. I like to read, if someone I respect tells me I should read a book, I read it immediately. That's how I found Stefan Zweig, and I didn't find him until I was 71 years old. But an Indian friend said, you've never read Stefan Zweig? And so I immediately read Stefan Zweig. So what are you reading this week? I am reading speeches by Churchill and Hitler. And my current novel is, I've been reading De Silva, I think it's De Silva or Silva, who writes about Italy and art fraud and art preservation, having been the head of Mossad. I find he's a wonderful writer, and I love his stories.
You're talking about Daniel Silva, right?
Yes, he's one. I think he's one. Daniel Silva. I think he's wonderful because his main character. Character is all that matters. His main character is fascinating.
Gabriel. Yeah.
Yes, Gabriel is fascinating, and I love him. Yeah.
But actually, I think all of the characters are fascinating. And one of the things I've been fortunate enough to run through the whole series with Daniel. He's come
Ah,
here. And I think one of the reasons that he is so good is that despite the continuing characters that fascinate us, he keeps introducing new ones. And
yes, he does.
the
Yeah.
Danish woman that he brought in book before last is just like amazing. And, I think it's real genius to be able
And
to.
which is the book you love most?
No, I love them all, but I
I
like
love them.
her as a new character. I thought that she put in a different energy and
Yeah, well,
um,
that's a great tell.
perspective into the book. Plus, we hadn't spent an enormous amount of time in Denmark, certainly some, but I think, yeah. And do you know, when I went to when I went to Corsica in May, my goal reading Daniel Silva was not just to smell the matcha, but to find a goat, preferably on the beaten path. And I told him when we sat down in July to do our book event together, I said to him, I am so disappointed with an inside job. And Daniel looked at me, he couldn't believe I would actually say that to him. And I said, Daniel, I said, I read the whole book waiting for an encounter with the goat. I wasted weeks in Corsica trying to find a goat just for
Find the
this
goat.
moment. And then he launched into a whole explanation of the goat and how, it sort of fell into one of the books, but then it just has kind of stayed as a continuing
And
character.
that can happen. That can happen to any author because you'll turn a page and think of something and do something. In the William Warwick books, his sidekick Ross, who was a real menace at one level, but a very, very got a wonderful moral compass at another level, came quite late,
Hmm.
and then I couldn't stop writing him. Ross kept propping up and saving him, getting him out of trouble, getting himself into more trouble, and it just went on and on. And then one of my sons said, "I love Ross," and I thought, wow, that's probably what the public think.
I'm sure you're right. It's been wonderful to spend an evening with you. Thank you so much for your
Very
time. Audience, thank you very much for watching. And next Tuesday, September 23rd, we will actually be able to sell you Endgame. So get your order in now so we don't run out. Thank you, Jeffrey, and best to your lovely wife, Mary. And
Thank you. Thank you, Barbara. And thank you for all you do for so many authors over so many years. It's a very important role. And don't think we don't know and don't think we don't appreciate it.
well, thank you. It's been a real pleasure, I assure you, all the way through. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey.
No,
You're
thank
great.
you. I shall now go to my next one. Thank you very much.